On this episode of the Mamas con Ganas podcast, I'm talking about 5 reasons why it's essential, mamacita, essential to become financially empowered. This is going to be a really good episode. I've done this episode already in Spanish. It's called Mujer Cinco Razones para Tomar Riendas de Tus Finanzas. So if you hear this episode, you like the tips, and then you know of somebody who doesn't, who wants to hear this in Spanish, send them to episode 76. Now, I brought along, just for fun, my financial partner in crime, my hubby, my very own handsome hubby, Dr. Mark Limasani.
Hello there.
Bienvenido, Carco.
Thank you,
Carco's
gracias.
what I call my husband. It's like his nickname. It's
It's a term of endearment.
term of endearment. Yes, it is. So, why did I bring my husband on this? I said, okay, I'm doing an episode on the 5 reasons why women in particular need to get financially empowered. But wouldn't it be fun to bring like a male perspective and to have sort of a ping pong conversation about the subject?
Sure.
So, you and I always discuss, we talk about money. We go to our financial advisors together.
Sure.
This is something that we make decisions on together,
Mm-hmm.
even though sometimes we don't necessarily agree on everything.
Mm-hmm.
We have to end up coming to an agreement at the end
Yep.
of the day.
Of course.
Now, we are both aware, you and I, that it's very important to become financially empowered.
Mm-hmm.
But for this episode, it's why women in particular even need to make it an even more
Conscious
essential.
effort.
Yes,
Yeah.
a real conscious effort.
Yep.
Historically, we were definitely not financially empowered.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I just go back to my grandmothers and my grandparents, you know, the person who used to control the finances pretty much in general was the man.
Mm-hmm.
Women weren't able even to have a mortgage or open bank accounts.
Wow.
This is very, very new. The idea of a woman becoming responsible for finances. It
Mm-hmm.
was always put on the man's plate, right?
Yep.
But that sort of created like a power struggle.
Of course.
And a lot of people felt manipulated because money tends to manipulate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the reason why I wanted to do this is, yes, we both agree that it's important to get financially, set and financially educated. But for women, baby, it's worse. It's more crucial. Why? Because number one, okay, we live longer than you guys, 5 years on average.
Shocking.
So yeah, but it's shocking, seriously.
Yeah. No, and it's extremely important to take one's finances very seriously. I mean, for finances to be one of many facets of life that are cared after. I mean, it's just like your relationship, you need to spend time and nurture it. Your finances is a similar concept, right? It's like one of other,
Yeah, it's
you
like your health. And the
exactly.
thing is that sometimes we want to ignore a specific aspect of our life.
Mhm.
But our wealth, the pillar of wealth, is really important. I mean, we can try to pretend that it's not important. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, money, I'm not about the money. It's not important." But I think money is just as much of a spiritual conversation as is taking care of our body,
Mhm.
because through finances we're able to give stuff back, to our children, also
Mhm.
for our provide for ourselves, and then give back to society.
Of course.
So it can be actually be a very spiritual conversation.
Mhm.
So yeah, women, mamacitas, we live longer. I mean, I could just tell you, I have one grandmother who's 99, and then my other grandmother who's 91.
Wow.
My grandfather just passed away recently. He was 96. So I have longevity in my
Yeah, you've
family.
got good genes.
I've got good genes. Hopefully, they'll stick to me. But that means I have to make sure that I'm financially set for my retirement,
Of course.
because retirement is super expensive. And you and I were discussing all this stuff with our financial advisors last
Mhm.
last week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that you have to have a good grasp. It's not that you can plan every single step of your life, neither from a financial perspective nor from a relationship related perspective. But if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
I love it.
That's
Say that again.
if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. At least to have some form of structure, some form of understanding, some form of intention related to your finances. Similarly, you set an intention for your household, you set an intention for your relationship. You have to set an intention for your finances in order to have something towards um
Something
in
to work towards.
exactly. That's exactly it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, yeah, as women, yeah, definitely retirement is expensive. The future, we have inflation rate. I mean, there's all these different things, but like I said, we live longer and our spouses tend to be older,
Mm.
which means, well, not in our case. I'm a cradle robber.
Watch
I'm
out.
older than my hubby.
So
I married a young one.
so for what other reasons do you think it's also important to
For
be
women,
yeah,
well, there's a huge gender gap, baby.
what does that mean?
Gender gap is a disparity between our annual earnings versus a man. So, for
Mhm.
example, and the worst disparity is between the white male and the Hispanic woman.
Got it.
The Hispanic woman earns 58 cents for every dollar earned by the white male.
Wow.
That's like almost half.
That's crazy.
So when a male, let's say they compared a salary of $55,000 for a white male,
Mhm.
the Hispanic female equivalent earns like $32,000. So
Wow.
that's
That
significant.
that really has a big impact. So I mean that and that is really having an understanding of like your value proposition. Like that would be, money to a certain extent has a pulse. It's an energy. And if you don't understand or you don't have an appreciation of what you're offering to the marketplace, whether you're a business owner or you're an employee, then that's when you end up with the short end of the stick. And if you don't really know what your financial needs are in order for you to be able to save and be able to plan for eventual slowdown, I won't call it full on retirement, but let's say years in which you're living off of that which you earned throughout your life, then it's all the more important to educate yourself as to, okay, well, this is how much I need to live, this is how much I need to save, this is how much I would like to or I want to earn, what skill set is required for me to be able to earn that, then learn the skills, apply it, and then go get what you want, you
Yeah, and
know?
learn how to negotiate. I think one of the big
Yeah,
things with women is that we don't know how to negotiate. We're learning that though. I see the younger generation changing. I see you girls. I see you, and I'm so proud of that. I think versus like the older generations, I think we're definitely getting there's more awareness about it in general
got it.
right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a big gender gap. That's huge. So it's even more crucial because of that to become financially empowered, mamacita. We got to talk more about money. We got to educate ourselves more about money. We got to have more women in the table
On the
surrounding
table.
in the what?
On the table.
On the table. What did I
At
say?
the table,
At the
actually.
table.
Not on the
He's
table.
always wanting to correct my English because I'm always correcting him in
There
Spanish.
you go. Well, hey.
Okay. Reason number three why women need to become financially empowered is that we actually spend less years in the workforce
Hmm.
on average than you
Than men do.
guys.
Naturally.
You guys graduate, you start working, and then you work all the way pretty much through retirement. I mean, on average, that's what happens. Of course, I'm just being, you know, we're looking at not everybody's life per se,
Of
but we're
course.
looking at on average. And women, a lot of times, they graduate. There's actually more women graduating from college right now,
Wow.
but a lot of us stop working. There's 44% out of the entire workforce. We make up 44% of the workforce. And
Which is, I
usually
mean,
it's
that's
significant.
significant.
Yeah, but we leave the workforce. This is what happens. And Alexandra Valentin, who did the financial advisor who did this episode with me in Spanish, was talking about, imagine you start working. So you start you're along with your male colleagues, you start working after you graduate college. And then let's say 7 years down the line, you stop working because you have kids. So you dedicate yourself to your family. By the time you get back on the workforce after your kids have grown, you're way behind your male counterparts because they've
Hmm.
stayed stuck, you know, through
That's true.
there.
Yeah,
And now their salary is like more than double what yours is when you're coming back.
of
So
course.
that hits us in a big, big, hard way, which means, again, we need to look at our numbers and we need to make sure that we know what we're doing for the future. Because I think a lot of times what happens as well when motherhood comes into play, it's like we dedicate all of our life for parenthood and we give so much energy to that that we almost have like no energy to put in for the finances and for our financial education, but that's like to our detriment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think it's a question of trying to balance things out. I mean, in some instances, don't get me wrong, it's extremely important to dedicate time to the children, and it does take a lot of time and a lot of bandwidth. Um, but then again, I mean, it's you just in certain instances, I would venture to say that some people choose to ignore their finances and they'll find every other excuse. They're too busy doing a million other things than to just take a step back and say, "Okay, listen, we gotta clean this up."
I completely agree. I completely agree. And
It's
I
not.
listen, I was guilty of this in my previous marriage. I feel like in a way I was sort of like a daughter to my ex-husband in that way, in the financial way. And then um and I talked about this in the episode that I did about discovering your money story.
Mm-hmm.
Discovering your money story. I did the episode. It was episode number 76. Oops, I gave the wrong episode for the last thing. Yeah, okay, I'll go back. So in episode 76, Alexandra Valentin, the financial advisor, and I went back basically to help women unravel what's their relationship with money.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking about that because a lot of times, you're right. It's like we find every excuse because there's so many other things to do in life than to actually make ourselves responsible and accountable for what's coming in and what's going out, what we're
Yeah,
saving, what we're investing, because it takes so much time,
it
doesn't it?
does. It's a commitment. It's
It-
it's a
ugh,
commitment,
I'm
and
telling
and
you guys,
and
it's a commitment because we spent last week, we sat down on a Wednesday with our financial advisors for what, like 7
yeah,
hours?
it was
It was
it's a big
intense.
commitment, and it's a question of if you know that savings comes first, and you have that analysis that okay, we're gonna just that comes off like that goes off the top. It's not that you spend, and then you're like, oh well, whatever we have left over, we'll save. No, you have to literally save off the top, and then live with what you have left. And then you're like, oh, well, whatever we have left over, we'll save. No, you have to literally save off the top and then live with what you have left.
Well, first of all, hold on a second. But you're talking about somebody who doesn't have debt. There's so many
Yeah.
people in the US that have debt. So, number 1, I would say if you don't know what your financial situation is, cuz a lot of people really don't.
Wow.
They just pay off their credit card, they pay the minimum and they don't really know that the hole that they're sinking themselves in. And when they actually come to look at the numbers years later, they're like freaking out because they've thrown so much money down the drain with credit card interest rates and all this. So first, like there needs to be like this certain courage to look at this
Mm-hmm.
head on, just like we face anything else. It's almost like when we ignore our children, well, disaster kind of we know what it is
Yeah.
when we don't pay sufficient energy to our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like if us parents weren't on top of our children, most likely they wouldn't be doing the homework that they're supposed to do. They wouldn't take the showers they're supposed to take.
Mm-hmm.
They'd not be going to bed on time. It's the same thing with money.
It's
It's
a
like
vicious cycle.
it's a
Yeah.
vicious cycle. It's like you have to be able to willing to examine it. And yes, although it's time consuming from my perspective, and I know from yours as well, but you can add something if you want here, is that after you spend that time looking at your finances and at your economic situation, it feels so much better,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely. It's like when you go to the gym, you don't always feel like going to the gym, but after you did that workout, you're like, oh, I'm really, really glad I did that.
Exactly. And we don't always spend that amount of time for this, but every couple of years when we're looking for our strategy for retirement, we get together again and
Mm-hmm.
have like a long session. And it's always so much worth it's so worth it. And particularly if you're listen, whether you're young and just starting out to work, like the the rewards that you can reap from starting to save early and saving for retirement. We saw that, like, well, it's huge.
It's
We
it
saw
ma-
this exercise. Remember, that was my
yes.
favorite part. Tell them about the exercise that we saw. The
Well, no, it's as simple as someone that starts saving as of, let's say, 19 years of age, and just slowly putting away. Even if they were to put away consistently for 5 years and then not put away at all for the rest of their lives, whereas another person that would wait 5 years and then start saving, very often, just because of that wealth that's been accumulated untouched, and that growth,
early.
the
Hmm.
growth that ends up occurring from from that money invested early on, it makes it such that people that start saving much later, they have it's so much harder to accumulate wealth
Yeah.
the longer you wait.
Yeah. However, I don't want to, if for anybody's listening and you really haven't taken responsibility for your wealth and now you're older, don't keep ignoring it.
Mhm.
This is the same thing. The monster just keeps getting bigger if that's what you're doing. So number one, women live longer. So we need to make sure that we have more money for saved up for retirement than men do.
Yep.
Number two, we have a gender gap that's really large. We spend less years in the workforce.
Mhm.
Number four, this is sad. This to me is like the saddest point. I don't mean to be Debbie Downer with this one, but women, we save less and we invest less. Now,
Okay.
okay, in defense of us girls, and this is the only defense I'm giving us, is the fact that, like I said, we earned less and we spend less years in the workforce. So that's the only thing I'm going to say to defend that a little bit.
Mhm.
However, here is where I put on my mindset cap and my mama con ganas. Yes, all of that is true. However, I do think that there's less women talking about this subject than men. I think it's something that, I don't know. I feel like men talking about money is like normal. Women talking about money, we talk about spending it. We talk about how we use it, like the creams and the shoes that we got, and this, and the
Mhm.
vacations that we went on, and the activities we put on our kids. But, and of course, I'm generalizing, mamacita. I have great examples of some of my friends that are completely financially empowered. But I'm just saying, in general, I feel like men have that discussion more. Do you think that's true?
I mean, I think it's cultural. I think money tends to be a bit more of a taboo subject. I don't think that most or all men just gather around talking about their finances. It's somewhat of a private subject.
Really? I
Yeah.
don't see men like that at all.
Well, that's your interpretation.
Maybe it's my interpretation.
Um
Okay, so maybe men don't talk about money.
but what I will say is that, the marketplace is very heavily oriented towards women spending more.
Oh my god. Well, do you know that we have 80% like decision on the purchasing power?
Mhm.
So and the brands know that. They know that 80% of what is spent in the household
Is
is
spent
determined by
by
the
the woman.
woman, and that's why we're targeted so heavily.
Mhm.
I mean, not to mention the fact that our products are more
Alright,
expensive than
exactly.
yours.
I know that.
And you know what,
The
why
pink tax.
mamacita? Because what is it called?
I think they call it the pink tax.
The pink tax. Oh my god. Yeah, well, and I believe that it's because we're willing to spend more money on it. Like every time I go shopping for you, like when I go like I got him some Christmas presents at Bloomingdale's for Valentine's, and I was like shopping. And when I got to the end and I'd seen like the amount of shirts that I got you and this and that, I was like, man, if this would have been this would have been my purchases, this would have cost 3 times as much.
It's
Like
amazing.
no joke. Like a male shirt in Bloomingdale's, like a nice shirt, not on sale. It was like
Mhm.
60. Okay, maybe the Hugo Boss, 100 and whatever. The girl shirts, women shirts of the good brand names. I'm talking about the same store, Bloomingdale's. You're talking about $350 and up. And we're
Wow.
talking about the same department store. And we use less fabric because we're smaller. So how is that fair?
There's more marketing that goes into.
I don't know what that is, but that's not fair. Like somebody, we have to start paying attention at one point, girls.
Mhm.
I think it's because we're willing to spend it.
Yeah. Then
And
no,
I
no.
think it's they play on the fact that it's like, oh, you want to look good, you want to look sexy, and na. I mean, look at shoes, for example. Like designer shoes for men. What, $600? Designer shoes for
No,
women
at the most. I mean,
at the
600
most.
bucks is
Exactly.
like
No, I'm talking about
insane.
really expensive stuff. Designer shoes for women, over $1,000.
Wow, that's insane.
And I'm talking about the high end, but if you go in the low end, it's the same thing.
Wow.
The shoes for men are $50. The women's are 100. It's like, and we make less. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys agree. If you agree, put some little thumbs up in the YouTube. And if you disagree, hey, join the conversation. Tell me what you think. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I don't know, but let us know.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's number 4.
4.
That's number 4. Okay, now, okay, mamacita, we come to number 5. Why women need to get a hold of their finances, why we need to educate ourselves is, well, there's an over 50% divorce rate. So obviously that affects both men and women,
Of course.
but did you know that 1 out of 5 women who gets divorced ends up in poverty? 1 out of 5.
Wow.
And
That's
it's
shocking.
usually because, I mean, I could assume that is because the woman has, either wasn't working and was taking care of the kids, or she gets somehow screwed during the divorce. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Point in fact, like at the end of the day, that's what the statistics is. 1 out of 5 women end up in poverty after divorce.
Divorce.
And
Wow.
that's the story of Alexandra Valentin, the financial advisor that came on the podcast, has been on the podcast several times. That's actually the reason why she decided to become a financial advisor, because that's what happened to her mom. Her
Oh,
mom
wow.
got divorced in her early 40s, was doing well with, with her father, and then divorce came. The dad kept on living a really great financial life, and the mother was stuck with like nothing.
Wow.
So it's a story we hear, and that's very common for us. On top of that, on top of everything else, 80% of single parents
Are women.
are women.
Wow. That's tough.
That's tough. So we make less. There's a gender gap. We save less. Our products are more expensive. 1 out of 5 of us gets put in poverty after divorce, and 80% of us end up dealing with having to take care of our children financially. That's a heavy duty burden, guys. What do you think about that?
That's
Want to be a woman now?
no, I think I'll keep what I got.
ah, feeling a little white male privilege here.
I don't know.
Oh no, I'm sorry. My husband is Canadian.
Exactly. I don't get no privilege here. I got stuck in Canada for 2 months. That there was no privilege on that on my end.
He's talking about, let me just give them context here.
Sure.
My husband's Canadian, and so we asked for the immigration interview in order for him to become an American resident.
Hmm.
And how many years did it take for you to get your immigration
Oh my
interview?
god.
Like forever. I mean, we've been married for almost 6 years now,
Hmm.
and we've been together for like
10.
12.
Yeah. 12.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
And then he gets stuck in Canada due to COVID for 2 months. For 2 months. So that's another story.
Yes.
Anyways, I want to end this podcast by saying something that I had no clue about. So today, when I was doing a little bit of research for the podcast episode, I found out about a term I didn't even know existed, and that's financial abuse.
Hmm.
You know what? Had you ever heard that term before?
No.
Okay, so financial abuse is basically, okay, it's also termed economic abuse, is a form of abuse when one intimate partner has control over the other partner's access to economic resources, which diminishes the victim's capacity to support themselves and forces them to depend on the perpetrator financially.
Mm.
So it's basically abuse of another person by financially controlling them.
Mm.
And what I was reading is that 99% of women who are stuck in a domestic violence abuse scenario, 99% of them are also financially abused,
Wow.
which means their partners
Take all control of
take
all
all
things.
control of the finances, but in a way where basically it's like a manipulation so that the other person doesn't leave. So it
Wow.
keeps them stuck in that situation. And there are signs of financial abuse. And I started reading them. I was like, oh my God. So one of them is that the person like opens credit cards up in your name and then maxes out the credit card. Or, once you get your paycheck, basically takes control of the money or
Mm.
is asking for a receipt for anything you spend. Basically, that person has you completely stuck financially.
Wow.
And so you're unable to leave the situation. And it's really interesting because Serena Williams, the tennis player, did this commercial, and this is now like what 2 years ago about this subject because one of her friends was apparently um, financially abused. And so she wanted to bring light to the subject. But I
Mm.
found it interesting. So I find that that's almost like a sixth reason for why everybody needs to be financially empowered.
Yes.
It's not just women. I mean, just everybody in general.
Yeah. You
If
can't put
you're,
yourself in that vulnerable position.
yeah,
100%.
it's like there's no empowerment without financial empowerment.
This is true.
And I keep saying that, and I'll say it till I'll turn blue, blue in the face, because it's true.
Yeah.
And this is an empowerment podcast. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for being on with me, baby.
It was my pleasure.
Talking about money
I love it.
and women.
There you go. That works.
Mamacita, if you want to comment on this episode, go to mamasconganas.com/81. Let us know what you thought. And if you, number one, if you've ever felt maybe a victim to financial abuse,
Mm-hmm.
or if you feel lazy, maybe even come to terms with the fact that, oops,
This is something I've been ignoring.
yeah. And perhaps it's because your husband makes the money and you think, well, he deals with it. I don't need to look at that. That's his stuff. I'm here to tell you, I've seen so many cases where women leave that only in the hands of their partners later to regret it with their entire being later on.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let that happen to you. They always say the smart people learn from others' mistakes.
That's good.
So become financially empowered, mamacita. I love you. Mwah. Hey, it's Valentina. Espero te gustó este episodio de nuestro podcast. If you liked it, or if any of our content has inspired you in any way, I'd be ever so grateful if you showed some amorcito by reviewing us on iTunes or wherever you listen to us. Every single review will help us reach more mamacitas so they can live their life con muchas ganas. It's because of you, our listeners, that we're able to create contenido para otras latinas. 1,000,000 de gracias por suscribirte, escuchar y compartir nuestro podcast. Si tienen preguntas, comentarios y más, pueden visitar nuestra página web mamasconganas.com or follow us on social media at mamasconganas. You can also write me directly at info@mamasconganas.com. Hasta la próxima, es Valentina recordándote, don't be a mama con drama. Let's be mamas con ganas. Besitos.